How's it going, guys, and welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the Buttplug. If you'd like to get the Buttplug for yourself, you're going to fast travel over to the Droughts on Pandora, specifically taking just the Droughts fast travel station. From there, make your way towards Ellie's scrapyard, where just out front you can pick up the Dump on Dumptruck side quest. Make your way to Dumptruck, wait for him to turn around so you can shoot him right in the asshole, which by the way is actually a requirement for getting this done. You can complete this quest without shooting him in the beehole, but you will not be rewarded with the Buttplug. After puckering his ass and stealing his loot, you will be rewarded with the Buttplug. If you've already completed this mission, you can get more Buttplugs from the Crazy Earl's Veteran Rewards vending machine over on Sanctuary. It is going to be a miracle if this video gets monetized. The Buttplug is a unique blue-rarity Jakobs pistol, having completely locked parts and always being non-elemental, and firing 6 projectiles per shot for 1 ammo cost per shot. The Buttplug has 110% melee damage on card, but the unique effect means that melee hits actually deal plus 100% melee damage when you hit an enemy from behind. This 100% melee damage is actually an entirely multiplicative bonus, meaning that this is effectively a ×2 slapped on top of everything that your melee hit is doing. Yo, what up, Shitty Mike editing Arachnica here. I also wanted to add on to this that during some math I was doing, I realized that the Buttplug also has something else going on with it. It's the same thing that the Psycho Stabber has with its melee damage, if you're aware of that, but the melee damage given from the Buttplug's blade is actually only 40%. It then has a 1.5 times modifier that is slapped on the end of your entire melee damage section of your formula. This is info that literally doesn't matter for the remainder of this video and is only for those that are nerds enough to care. Also worth noting, despite being a pistol, this gun does not actually shoot pistol damage, instead being shotgun damage. This means that it will not get pistol damage specific bonuses, only shotgun. And finally, this gun cannot be anointed. Getting into it, this is really not a great shooter. It is absolutely awful damage with a super tiny mag and terrible accuracy. And of course, no anointment. But giving this an anointment doesn't really help anything either. Even with an anointment, every single one of the previous listed issues is still an issue. The Buttplug, as a shooter, is worthless on True Only One Takedown, took an entire minute to kill a single enemy on True Guardian Takedown, and only just barely felt like a gun on Athenas, at least until you encounter a slightly tanky enemy. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the Buttplug in the way that it actually matters, as a melee weapon. I hope you're ready to see Amara for the rest of this video. Initially upon using it, I was neither underwhelmed or super impressed, which I suppose would mean that I was perfectly whelmed. That is, until I remembered that this gun did not have an anointment and it was actually holding the fuck up despite that. And I do mean I actually had to remember that, because I straight up forgot that this was unanointable while using it. For some context on this build that you're going to be seeing, this is my one-punch Amara build, focused on dumping as much damage into a single punch as possible to one-tap enemies. Usually, it uses a 150/90 anointment on top of a Psycho Stabber to make sure that that happens. As a rule, though, I tend to avoid using 150/90 for this series, so I decided to do a baseline run of this build with this Psycho Stabber that instead had ASE melee on it. And in that case, I could still one-punch enemies pretty often, but sometimes it was 2 and rarely it was 3. The Buttplug can pretty consistently 3 to 2 hit enemies, unanointed, with potential to one-tap squish your enemies. And that is without even consistently hitting them from the back, which even that's a lot easier to do than I anticipated. I thought that was going to be a little bit annoying to play around, but melee hits can stagger enemies, giving you a really nice opening to be able to get behind them, and kind of giving you this 1-2 wombo combo gameplay loop where you slap someone, stagger them, and then run around to hit them with the nastiest concho ever. But if you just want to immediately go up and get in there, that's also an option if you decide to use the Frozen Heart or Snowshoe, which not only is just great crowd control to be able to close the gap between you and their booty cheeks, but frozen enemies take 3 times damage from melee hits. And guess what? That too is also its own multiplier, meaning if you hit something from behind, you're getting ×2 on top of all your melee damage, and then another ×3 on top of that, which leads to me one-shotting enemies with an unanointed blue melee weapon without a brawler ward on a build that usually makes heavy use of the brawler ward. Cause yeah, I kinda just slapped a Snowshoe on the one-punch build to test this. This is the Buttplug simply doing its thing on a build that is not at all optimal optimized for the Buttplug to do its thing. Also, Kraken damage. Now, what if you do put a melee anointment on it? Well, it begins giving the Psycho Stabber a run for its fucking money. Of course, this isn't a surprise though. It was holding up against it without an anointment. Giving it one is of course going to put it on par, but honestly, situationally, I think the Buttplug has higher potential, especially when you start playing with cryo stuff. It is, of course, a bit more difficult to use, and would also require that you save edit in an anointed one, but in just raw damage potential, damn, this thing is impressive. Overall, the Buttplug is just killer, man. I did somewhat expect this, as the multiplicative bonus is something I was aware of since my Ultimate Amara guide, and I've played around with the Buttplug a bit previously, but damn did this still surprise me. Enough that I no longer believe the Psycho Stabber to just be the end-all be-all melee weapon in BL3, with the Buttplug holding a firm spot up there with it. It is definitely a huge shame that it can't be anointed, because then it could actually legitimately compete with the Psycho Stabber, but even without it, it's still a great option, and it's definitely a bit more unique than just kind of doing nothing and getting a shit ton of melee damage from the Stabber. But a lack of anointment means that it heavily limits build options and potential interactions. But even then, man, I love this thing. Expect a build video. That's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. Down in the description will be a link to my Twitch channel where you can follow to be notified of when I go live, and just below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.